Hey book readers, I'm just taking a moment to share what I read this month. Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. In the near future, Kivrin is a historian who wants to study the Middle Ages in depth, and thanks to time travel, she can. So Kivrin sets out to record what she experienced all the way back in 1320. However, shortly after she's sent back in time, all hell is breaking loose in the present as a pandemic has begun. This also makes it difficult for those involved in Kivrin's mission, including her anxious mentor, Mr. Dunworthy, so they can't determine if Kivrin arrives safe and sound in the right time and place or not. In essence, they're racing against the clock to calculate exactly where and when to rendezvous with Kivrin and rescue her before she's stuck in the Middle Ages forever. Meanwhile, Kivrin is dealing with a host of problems in the past, helping those around her as much as possible and simultaneously trying to determine how to get back home. It's a good time travel book, but there's only one complaint that I have about it. It's slow at times. You think you're about to make a major discovery about what's happening in either of the two timelines, but the characters keep getting thwarted again and again and again. It gets aggravating after a while, but it's a neat trick that the Doomsday Book pulls, teasing you into reading more and more because you think the defining action of the book might just happen on the next page. I'm gonna give this 4 dog ears. For the real multitaskers out there, I recommend reading the Doomsday Book while gnawing on a giant turkey leg, maybe watching a joust. The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I talked about this one in my video with 5 light fantasy reads, so I'll just do a quick recap here. Linus Baker is a straight-laced caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth. He's checking on magically inclined children at orphanages. Then he's sent to Marcius Island Orphanage, where only the strangest and most dangerous magical children go, so the government can keep tabs on them. It's a story about family and belonging, and I read some of the ebook but preferred listening to the audiobook because the narrator did such a great job with the different voices of the children. And I'll give this one 4 dog ears as well. I think this might have been an issue with how much hype there was surrounding this book because it was really, really good, but it just didn't quite live up to the expectations I had put on it. Deep as the Sky, Red as the Sea by Rita Chang Epig. This was more laid back than I thought it would be. I was expecting a swashbuckling tale with constant battles raging on the high seas. But this book is pretty subdued. There's still fighting, spies, and torture, but most of the time it's more understated than that. The protagonist, Shek Young, is a clever strategist and fearless fighter. After escaping a life as an enslaved prostitute, she's gotta navigate the trials of her pirate captain husband dying, keeping her fleet together, and outrunning the pirate hunter who's been tasked with stopping her. The book deals with themes related to freedom, power, trust, and vulnerability. And I'm gonna give this one 4 dog ears as well. While it wasn't quite what I expected, I liked the balancing act Shek Young had to endure with her powerful position as the female ship's captain in a male-dominant world, always in the back of her mind. Aversion by Alastair Reynolds. This book threw me off when it started on a ship sailing the seas in the 1800s. I was like, hey, isn't this supposed to be a sci-fi book? But then something happens and the exploration meets with disaster. And this happens over and over, with certain elements that keep repeating, but the timeline jumps forward 100 years or so each time. The protagonist, Dr. Silas Cody, has to figure out why this is happening and how to get out of this never-ending loop that keeps moving forward in time with each reset. This was like an extended episode of The Twilight Zone mixed with Star Trek and a hint of the beginning of Project Hail Mary all rolled up into one. You're as confused as Dr. Cody, but it's a good kind of confused where the puzzle pieces slowly come together, kind of similar to Piranesi in that way. I really like this one. I'm giving it 5 dog ears because it was an excellent puzzle with layers that it just really revealed well. The characters and the action were good, but it was the unraveling of the mystery that made it so enjoyable in the end. The Deep by Rivers Solomon. This was a quick 166-page novella that I audiobooked with David Diggs as the narrator. The description for this one is that the water-breathing descendants of African slave women tossed overboard have built their own underwater society and must reclaim the memories of their past to shape their future. Now, the holder of the memories, Yetu, no longer wants the responsibility as it's killing her. So she goes to the surface, meets one of the 2 legs, and learns more about who she is. One of the main themes this book deals with is the pain of remembering. Unfortunately, when it comes to my memory, I have a feeling that this book isn't going to stick with me for very long. That's why I'm just going to give this one 3 dog ears. It was over too quick. I mean, it's a short book, but I wanted more hints about these, more people's backstory, and I didn't connect with Yetu as much as I needed to feel immersed in the story. Going Zero by Anthony McCartan. 10 Americans are given the chance of a lifetime. They'll help test the ultimate surveillance program known as Fusion by avoiding detection and capture for 30 days. Do so and they win $3 million. So the goal is to see if it's possible to successfully go off the grid and not be tracked down by all of this super tech. In the book jacket description of this one says that among the contestants is an unassuming Boston librarian named Caitlin Day. She's been chosen as the gimme, the easy target expected to be found first, but Caitlin excels at confounding expectations. Her talents at this particular game are far more effective than all the security experts expect, and her reasons for playing far more personal than anyone can imagine. I'm giving this one 4 dog ears. I was having a ball reading both sides of this high-tech versus low-tech game of hide and seek, but then it veers into a slightly different story, which I won't spoil it, but I didn't like as much as seeing how the simple librarian could outsmart some of the most brilliant minds in the world. A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Long story short, there are 4 different Londons with varying amounts of magic in them, and only a couple of magicians who can cross into each of them. Then a piece of the magic that isn't supposed to exist enters the mix, leading to a quest and a magical power struggle. Delilah Bard, a young thief looking for an adventure, and Kel, one of the most powerful magicians in the world, have to team up to keep the dangerous magical object out of the wrong hands. 4 dog ears. I didn't like it as much as the other Schwab book I read, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but this one has excellent world building that was surprisingly easy to follow. In the wrong hands, it would have been confusing. Thankfully, Schwab did a good job of painting a picture of how each of the 4 Londons differ from one another. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I really enjoyed the setting of the story, a school where students train to become dragon riders in order to help fight a war that's been raging for centuries. And the 2 main characters, Violet and Xaden, had interesting backstories and goals that added depth to their decisions. However, there are too many peripheral characters and a few seemed pretty two-dimensional, lacking reasons for their actions or personalities. Like Jack Barlow, the guy who wants to kill Violet from day one. Whether he's some kind of psycho serial killer or just a mean bully, like what made him become this way? Not sure I ever got answers to some of those questions. And there was also some flawed logic. For instance, why do so many of these aspiring dragon riders have to die? Couldn't the ones who fail to live up to the lofty standards help the war effort in some other way? You know, somebody is going to have to clean up the dragon poop, right? Just a warning, there's a lot of longing glances, lip biting, butterflies in stomach, and innuendos. If it was a couple times, great, I'd get it. But it was all the time. Eventually, I just found myself skipping over those parts as well as the sex scenes. 4 dog ears. It's a neat concept, solid execution, just too much yearning. There you have it, the highs and lows of July 2023. Remember to like and subscribe. Happy reading.